Imagine, you apply for this life-changing job, right? You got the perfect resume, the exact right experience, but your application is rejected in like zero point 0.4 seconds.
Wow.
There's no human HR manager to email. There's zero feedback loop. A machine has it's basically decided you're invisible.
Right, yeah.
And if you were listening to this right now, you know that scenario isn't science fiction anymore. I mean, it is the actual reality of the systems currently running our world.
It really is.
So you want to cut through the noise, right? Skip the whole hype about rogue terminators and actually understand the mechanics of how organizations are fundamentally changing how they decide your fate.
Exactly.
That is the mission of today's deep dive. We are unpacking a truly groundbreaking paper by Jonathan H. Westover, PhD. It's titled Leading Algorithmic Authority, Ethical AI Governance as Legitimacy Infrastructure.
It's a fantastic paper.
It is. And I want to be super clear right out of the gate. We are not doing a technical deep dive into neural networks or like Python coding here.
No.
We are talking about power.
Yeah, power. Because algorithms they've really crossed a distinct threshold recently. They've shifted from being these background IT tools to the primary gatekeepers of modern society.
Right.
If you look at the research, the anxiety people feel about AI integration is heavily validated. It's validated by how rapidly these systems are just accumulating authority.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Right. We're looking at this invisible infrastructure that determines, your access to credit. It filters your career opportunities. It even influences the medical treatments you're prescribed or moderates the global political discourse you're participating in online.
It's basically running the show.
Exactly. The whole power dynamic between the individual and the institution it's fundamentally fractured.
Okay, let's unpack this because, if these algorithms are effectively running the core pillars of society, how are the organizations building them, making sure they don't cause, catastrophic harm?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah, right. And the core thesis of Westover's paper is that the current corporate strategy, which is basically treating AI ethics like a standard compliance checklist, is just a complete recipe for institutional disaster.
It's totally inadequate.
Yeah, so we have to completely overhaul our understanding of what an algorithm actually is.
Yes, and to grasp why the standard corporate checklist fails so spectacularly, we really have to examine what Westover defines as algorithmic authority.
Okay.
This is the central pivot of the entire paper. Algorithmic authority is basically the capacity of automated systems to classify, rank, predict, and ultimately exclude individuals at machine speed.
Machine speed, right?
And almost always without any meaningful human oversight. Think about it. When a bank implements a credit scoring algorithm, they are not just upgrading their IT infrastructure, they are fundamentally reorganizing their institutional power.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The authority to decide who gets capital and who doesn't is transferred from a human deliberation process directly to a mathematical model.
I see. So the best way I can visualize this is it's like the difference between a compass and an autopilot.
Oh, I like that.
Right, because a compass gives you data. It tells you, which way is north.
Right.
But you, the human navigator, you're still steering the ship.
Exactly. You're in control.
Yeah, you could choose to ignore the compass if you see a giant iceberg right ahead of you.
Right.
But an autopilot actually steers the ship for you. And what this research suggests is that we have essentially handed the steering wheel of society over to these algorithms, but we're expecting them to act like compasses.
Yes.
When in reality, they're flying the plane.
That is spot on. And what's fascinating here is how the delegation of that steering wheel diffuses accountability.
How so?
Well, think about when a human loan officer denies you a mortgage. There's a visible chain of deliberation there.
Right. There's a paper trail.
Exactly. There's documentation. There's an actual person sitting across a desk who has to look you in the eye.
Yeah, and you can argue your case.
Right. There's an established process to ask for reconsideration. But when algorithmic authority takes over, those determinations, approval or denial, inclusion or exclusion, they just flow out of a black box.
Just a completely opaque system.
Yes. The organization still exercises immense power over your life, but the accountability mechanism becomes totally invisible to the average citizen.
Which, that brings us to the inevitable fallout, right? Because if algorithms now hold all this unquestioned authority, what happens when the autopilot malfunctions?
Well, that's where things get dangerous.
Right, because the dominant culture in the tech industry has always been, Move fast and break things.
Yeah, the classic Silicon Valley mantra.
Exactly. And that's a perfectly fine philosophy if you're building, I don't know, a new photo sharing app.
Right.
If the app crashes, literally nobody cares. But if you are deploying the algorithmic system that decides who qualifies for state welfare benefits.
Yeah, the stakes are totally different.
Right. Breaking things means breaking people's actual lives. So what is driving these companies to just rush the deployment of such high-stakes technology?
So organizations are caught in this crazy collision of dual pressures. First, you have the innovation imperative.
Okay.
The market pull is just immense. Automating complex decisions promises massive competitive advantages.
Because it's cheaper.
Huge cost reductions, unprecedented efficiency. Executives are under extreme pressure from their boards and from vendors to scale AI immediately or risk completely fading into obsolescence.
Right.
But pushing against that is the force of disruption. The regulatory landscape right now is highly volatile. The technological infrastructure itself is often pretty fragile, and public trust is incredibly fragile. So leaders are out there deploying these AI systems long before their internal governance capabilities have matured enough to handle the sheer velocity of the tech.
Looks like
They're essentially installing a jet engine on a bicycle and just hoping the brakes hold.
Wow. Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, though. Because whenever we talk about algorithmic harm, the immediate counter-argument is always, wait a minute, humans are incredibly biased.
Oh, absolutely. We are.
Right. Humans make terrible discriminatory decisions every single day.
Yes, they do.
Like, a human hiring manager might throw out a perfectly good resume just because they're exhausted, or they harbor some unconscious bias against a certain name.
Yep.
So why is algorithmic failure uniquely dangerous compared to just standard flawed human judgment?
It's a great question. The danger really lies in the mechanics of scale, opacity, and the compounding nature of algorithmic harm. Westover's paper details this extensively.
Okay, lay it out for me.
So when a human makes a biased decision, the damage is tragic, right?
Yeah.
But it's usually localized to that specific interaction.
It's a one-off.
Exactly. When an algorithmic system is biased, it applies that identical bias to millions of decisions simultaneously, at machine speed.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the scale is completely different.
And furthermore, marginalized groups historically have fewer digital traces. They just lack the robust data representation that these models actually require to function accurately.
All right.
So the algorithm, which is constantly seeking statistical confidence, just systematically excludes them.
Because they don't have enough data on them.
Right. And because they're excluded from participating in the digital economy, guess what? They generate even less data.
Man, it's like a bouncer at an exclusive club who only lets you in if you have a VIP card. But the only way to get the VIP card is to already be inside the club.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. If you don't have that initial digital footprint, the system just continually pushes you further and further out into the margin.
Exactly. That compounding exclusion creates a vicious cycle. And the paper categorizes this resulting fallout into two distinct types of harm.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is procedural injustice.
Procedural injustice.
Right. This is that incredibly frustrating experience of being denied a job, housing, or social services without any intelligible explanation or avenue for recourse.
You just get an email saying no.
Exactly. The machine simply outputs a no, and there is literally no human empowered to overturn it.
And the second type?
The second is dignity harms.
Dignity harm.
Yeah. This refers to the profound psychological toll of being reduced to a flawed data profile.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Just consider the impact of being incorrectly flagged by a medical algorithm as, say, high risk for drug abuse.
Yes.
Or categorized by a security system in a deeply offensive way, and then having absolutely no way to correct that permanent digital record.
And it isn't just the individuals bearing the brunt of this, right? The organizations rushing these half-baked systems into production are setting huge traps for themselves.
Massive traps.
Because the paper mentions reputational collapse, which obviously one viral story about your algorithm discriminating against applicants and your brand is just incinerated. But the operational disruption aspect really caught my eye. Tell me about how companies trap themselves here.
Yeah, so organizations automate these systems specifically to save money, right? Which usually involves dismantling their manual processing capabilities. They basically lay off the human workforce that previously handled that task.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Exactly. When the algorithmic system inevitably fails or produces biased outcomes or faces a sudden audit, the company is forced to pull it offline.
And then what?
Then they suddenly realize they no longer possess the human capital or the institutional knowledge to process those decisions manually.
They can't go back.
Right. Service delivery completely halts. They literally become hostage to their own automation.
Wow.
And concurrently, regulatory bodies are stepping in with unprecedented force right now.
Right, like in Europe.
Yes, the EU AI Act is a prime example. It's legislation providing severe penalties for reckless deployment. Treating algorithmic governance as just a voluntary PR exercise is now a massive existential legal liability.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if the stakes are genuinely this high, right? If the legal fines and operational risks are this severe, why are the existing ethical AI frameworks completely failing to stop these harms?
It's wild, isn't it?
It is, because major companies have AI ethics boards. They publish these glossy policy documents.
Oh, yeah.
They run the compliance checklists, yet the harms keep happening. And Westover points out this brilliant structural flaw in how corporate leadership views ethics.
Yes, this is a huge insight.
Right. The current frameworks operate on the assumption that we live in a stable world. They assume a baseline of reliable infrastructure, static regulations, broad social trust. But in volatile environments, which, let's be honest, has always been the reality in the global south and is rapidly becoming the reality everywhere, that stability is just an absolute illusion.
It is. The traditional compliance checklist fundamentally misunderstands the nature of the current tech landscape. Well, if you're operating in an environment with perfectly stable regulations and clean, unbiased data pipelines, sure, a static checklist might suffice.
Right.
But volatility is the defining characteristic of the modern era. Regulations shift literally overnight. Social consent is constantly being contested. And data environments are just inherently messy.
Yeah.
So in this state of perpetual volatility, ethics cannot be treated as a peripheral constraint.
It can't just be a tack on.
Exactly. It cannot be a box you just check at the end of the software development lifecycle. Ethical governance is the necessary precondition for your organizational strategy to even be executable.
It's like, okay, using a static compliance checklist in a volatile world is like relying on a paper map from 1995 to navigate a city that is actively under construction.
Oh, that's exactly it.
Right, the roads have changed, bridges are out, new highways are being built daily. That paper map is useless.
Completely useless.
You need a GPS that is actively sensing the environment, interpreting traffic patterns, and recalculating your route in real time.
Yeah.
Because if you hand a technical team the 1995 paper map and tell them, hey, just make the code fair, you are going to drive the entire company right off a cliff.
You really are. And the paper describes the consequence of that paper map mentality as the boomerang effect.
The boomerang effect.
Yeah. Executive leadership frequently treats algorithmic authority as a purely technical challenge.
Right.
So they delegate the governance of these systems to siloed engineering teams.
Just throw it to the coders.
Exactly. And those engineers operating under intense pressure to deliver efficiency, they just optimize the algorithm mathematically. They're completely isolated from the social context.
They're just looking at the math.
Right. And because the leadership failed to address the broader institutional volatility or secure the social legitimacy of the system, that isolated tech problem boomerangs right back to the executive suite.
That's a huge crisis.
As a full-blown strategic crisis. Stakeholders rebel, regulators issue massive fines, and the organization fundamentally loses its social license to operate.
So it is a profound failure of leadership, not just a failure of code.
Absolutely.
Okay. We know the checklist is a dead end. We know delegating to a siloed tech team guarantees a boomerang crisis.
Right.
We need a way out of this trap.
We do.
How do organizations actually survive, govern this technology, and maintain public trust? Westover's paper doesn't just diagnose the illness, right? It provides a highly detailed, actionable blueprint for survival.
It does. And the blueprint Westover introduces really centers on building legitimacy infrastructure.
Legitimacy infrastructure.
Yes. This requires a radical departure from traditional management. He proposes a leadership framework called Sensing, Stabilizing, and Legitimizing, or the SSL framework.
That's just it.
Right. And the core philosophy here is that sustainable governance of algorithmic authority requires distributed capability across the entire organization.
Okay.
It cannot just reside solely in a centralized compliance department.
I want to make the mechanics of this SSL framework super concrete for you listening, because the paper highlights several real-world organizations that are actually doing this right. They are. Let's look closely at how they function, starting with Microsoft's Aether Committee. How does a committee actually perform the sensing part of that framework without just becoming, another layer of corporate bureaucracy?
Well, the Aether Committee succeeds because it institutionalizes cross-disciplinary sensing. They do not rely solely on software engineers to identify potential societal harms.
Who else do they bring in?
The committee integrates ethicists, legal scholars, and they have ongoing dialogue with external civil society organizations.
Okay, so a real mix of perspectives.
Exactly. They proactively stand for weak signals of harm long before a product ever goes to market.
That's smart.
Yeah. By publishing impact assessments for high-stakes AI systems early in the development cycle, they treat transparency as a continuous, required leadership obligation, not just some reactive crisis management tool.
They sense the societal friction and stabilize the product before it deploys.
Precisely.
And that brings us to procedural justice, which is so crucial to preventing those dignity harms we discussed earlier. The example of DBS Bank in Singapore really highlights the legitimizing phase.
It's a great example.
Right. They automated their lending, but instead of just hiding behind a black box, they built a customer-facing AI transparency framework. So the algorithm denies you a loan. You don't just get a generic computer says no message.
Right.
You receive a plain language explanation detailing exactly why the algorithmic lending decision went against you. But here is the critical part. They have clear human override protocols.
Yes. And that human override is the actual essence of procedural justice.
Right.
DBS Bank acknowledges that their algorithmic system, no matter how sophisticated it is, will inevitably make errors.
Sure.
So they built public legitimacy by ensuring there is a fair, easily understandable, and accessible process for the public to challenge those machine errors.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. It's the integration of human judgment as a fail-safe against algorithmic scale.
Now, the city of Amsterdam is doing something similar, but on a municipal level.
Right.
They created a public algorithmic registry. It openly documents the AI systems used in city services, listing the purpose, the specific impact assessments, and the ongoing monitoring protocols.
It's brilliant.
It is. They are treating transparency not as a PR campaign, but as actual physical public infrastructure,
Yeah.
like a bridge or a water treatment plant.
Exactly. They recognize that public trust is a tangible asset. By placing the inner workings of their municipal algorithms right out there in a public registry, Amsterdam allows civic organizations and journalists to audit the systems.
They're opening the doors.
They are actively inviting scrutiny to build legitimacy.
Now, I want to talk about organizational capability because this is where the theory hits the messy reality of corporate politics.
Oh, yes.
Unilever established a fairness task force to govern their algorithmic hiring systems.
Right.
It brings together HR professionals, legal counsel, and data scientists. And the paper states this cross-functional team has the shared power to modify or completely suspend biased hiring tools. But let me stop right there because we need a reality check. In the real world, a massive corporation spends millions developing an AI tool to cut HR costs. Are you telling me an internal task force genuinely has the political capital to hit a kill switch on a multi-million-dollar investment just because a data scientist flags a bias issue?
It sounds crazy, right? But the authority to hit that kill switch is precisely what separates actual governance from ethics washing. If a governance board only has advisory power, it is entirely performative.
They're just a suggestion box.
Exactly. The business case for granting that task force genuine authority is risk mitigation. Executives at Unilever understand that deploying a biased hiring algorithm at a global scale exposes the company to regulatory fines that absolutely dwarf the initial development costs.
Not to mention the brand damage.
Yes, the irreparable damage to their employer brand. Giving the task force teeth, the actual authority to suspend a system, is the stabilizing mechanism.
I see.
It prevents the boomerang effect from wiping out the executive suite.
So it's short-term friction for long-term survival.
Exactly.
Finally, the paper points to Capital One's AI governance office as a model for adaptive documentation.
Yes.
Instead of the old corporate standard where you write a policy, get it approved, and stick it in a drawer to gather dust until the annual review, they treat regulatory volatility as a permanent daily condition.
Capital One's approach recognizes that static policies are useless in a dynamic environment. Their governance office is constantly scanning the horizon for shifting regulations and emerging legal precedents.
It's an active process.
Very active. Their documentation is a living, breathing entity that constantly adapts to the external environment. If we connect this to the bigger picture, all these examples, Microsoft's sensing, DBS Bank's human override, Amsterdam's public infrastructure, Unilever's cross-functional authority, and Capital One's adaptive scanning, we see a new paradigm of leadership.
We really do.
Westover argues that modern leaders must evolve into institutional sense-makers. Their primary job is architecting these adaptive guardrails.
Right.
These guardrails ensure decisions remain contestable, they trigger human intervention when necessary, and they preserve the operational agility of the AI while fiercely protecting the institution's public legitimacy.
So what does this all mean? If we distill this entire deep dive down for you, it comes to this stark realization. Legitimacy is not some happy, accidental byproduct of writing clean code.
No, it's not.
It's the absolute foundation of institutional survival. You literally cannot govern what you have not first legitimized to the public.
Absolutely.
If people do not trust the system will eventually collapse under its own weight, paralyzed by lawsuits, regulatory intervention, and just general public revolt.
The central lesson of Westover's research is really that the deployment of artificial intelligence is fundamentally not a mathematical challenge. It is a deeply human trust problem.
And for you listening, I want you to really internalize this dynamic. Because tomorrow or next week, when you submit a resume, apply for a mortgage, or sit in a doctor's office waiting for a treatment plan, your life is going to intersect with algorithmic authority. These invisible systems are making determinations about your trajectory. By understanding the mechanics we've unpacked today, knowing what procedural injustice looks like, recognizing a dignity harm, you are equipping yourself to recognize when a system is treating you as just a mere data point.
Exactly.
It gives you the vocabulary to push back, ask the right questions, and demand actual human accountability.
You know, this raises an important question, and it is a really complex horizon the research forces us to confront.
What's that?
We have established today that sustaining long-term legitimacy depends on procedural justice. The absolute requirement that a human being can clearly understand and successfully appeal a machine's decision.
Right.
But we are rapidly approaching a threshold where AI models are becoming so computationally complex with, billions of parameters that even the engineers who design them can no longer provide a plain language explanation for why a specific output was generated.
Oh, wow.
So how can an organization possibly sustain public legitimacy or offer meaningful procedural justice when the algorithmic authority steering the ship speaks a mathematical language that no human mind can truly comprehend?
Man. That is a chilling, complex reality to leave off on. We are handing over the steering wheel to systems we barely understand, and the fight to maintain our ability to ask why is really just beginning. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the invisible infrastructure around you, demand procedural justice, and never forget that you have the right to challenge the machine. We will catch you next time.